All right, so I thought we did cover one or two of these questions on Wednesday, but I thought, considering those circumstances, we might go over that ground again. And it was around question 5 where I'd like to come back to. And again, we don't have to cover this in great length, but just sort of go over this again as we move forward. So here in Numbers 11, Moses is in this conversation with the Lord after the people have already complained. They want meat. They've grumbled. And Moses has almost thrown in the towel here. He's even gotten to the point of saying, Lord, just end me right here. I'm through with these people. I can't bear them anymore. And after that, the Lord tells him what he's going to do for the people, that he's going to provide them this meat. And we remember the Lord's response there in verse 23 of Numbers 11. The Lord said to Moses, "Has the Lord's arm been shortened? Now you shall see whether what I say will happen to you or not." So basically just hold tight. You'll see what I'm capable of. And we've already noted Moses should have known what the Lord was capable of, but he is a man like us, and there are times when even great men slip and flinch in those instances. Let's see here. We talked about the elders, which is part of this sort of narrative as well. And that's part of Moses' complaint, is he can't bear this on his own. And so the Lord sends him help, those 70 elders. He does not scold Moses for asking for that help. He realizes this is a heavy burden that Moses has to bear. So he gives them those, and we talked about there's 2 others that end up prophesying as well, that God or the Lord's Spirit is passed on to, Eldad and Medad. They were not among those who gathered at the tent, and yet they still prophesied. Joshua comes to him and says, "Forbid them to do this," but Moses says, "No, I wish all of Israel had this spirit," almost as if to say, I wish all of Israel had this sort of unity instead of being rebellious and disloyal and complaining and all of those things. So then, what I wanted to spend a little bit more time on, that we spent some time on Wednesday with, is the Lord does end up fulfilling his promise that he is going to provide for them, not just 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, but a whole month, he says, that quantity of quail. And I think the text says something around 2 cubits high the quail reaches to, so plenty of food for the people. He fulfills that. And what is the end result of that? So the Lord provides these things, and then how do the people respond to the blessing that the Lord provides? We talked about this some on Wednesday, but I know maybe we can't remember all those things.
While they were still had meat in between their teeth, they sent a plague on them.
Yeah.
Ungrateful.
And I think that's the key, and that's what the Waldron material talks about this as well, that it was a spirit of ungratefulness. This awesome thing happens to them, and how do they respond to it? They're still greedy. That's how the text starts. And I didn't mention this in verse 35 of chapter 11, or let's see, so verse 34 we could back up to. So he called the name of that place Kibroth Hattava, because there they buried the people who had yielded to craving. Does anyone have a footnote on what that name means? There's maybe a couple of different ways you could translate that, but yeah, graves of craving, graves of lusting. So I think that gets to the idea of why the Lord punished them in this way and sent that plague. Did I see a hand a moment ago? All right. Anything else there on the quail being sent?
You can't help but but see the image of a spoiled child when you look at Israel. You know, you give them what they need. Well, I don't want that. I want this. And then when you give it to them, they still don't have any gratitude. You'd spank your children for that. And I think that Israel has offended God. He doesn't go into detail, as you mentioned, about, you know, it seems like God promised them the meat. He gave it to them. They ate it. What's the problem? What's underlying is, you know, that greed and ingratitude was offensive to God, and destructive spirit, and He sent punishment because of that.
You know, it's a good point. And so many other times in the narrative, we will see at times where Israel is thankful for God's blessings, and they direct that thankfulness to God. You see no flavor of that here in this story. It's immediately gather up as much as they could, and it even, the text says, verse 32, he who gathered least gathered 10 homers. And you may have a reference there, but that would be, just from the least, the one who gathered least, there was an abundance. They had plenty, and yet they did not direct thankfulness. Yes, sir.
Let's see if I can put this into words. When, you know, God provides for them, but God expects, they should depend on God, and not, they seem like they just want to kind of coast along and expect everything just to be provided, but yet not request of God or ask of God for X, Y, Z. They're just expecting it to be provided, period.
Sure.
And then it's like they're entitled to this. What's the deal? Why isn't it here? And then, of course, failure to acknowledge and be grateful for the source from which this came. But again, I think God expects us to ask. God knows what we need. God knows what they need. But they fail to ask God. They just instead jump right off into the complaint train and say, oh, woe is me. Why this? Why this? And not want to go to God. So, could you bless us with this or that? And thank you for this blessing. Thank you for what you have done for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is so much of it. There is so often that entitlement that we see even through the divided kingdom on into captivity. You know, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord, the temple of the Lord. We're God's people. Just simply because of the fact that, you know, we have the temple, or we have the tabernacle, or we have the pillar of cloud, or they might get used to those things. Yes, sir.
Just one more point. They're not the last folks to have a problem with that. And, you know, this idea of being ungrateful and complaining, I think this record is given in part to hold a mirror up to ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, even originally it was to hold up a mirror to that second generation that was to enter the land. I think, you know, be sure that you're not, and Deuteronomy covers much of that in similar ways. But yes, and then we take that to ourselves and we hold that up. Anything else? Yes, sir.
As Mike said, I think we're told, even in the New Testament, that we're not passive. We are to seek and to knock and to ask.
Yeah. The Lord is looking for that relationship. It's not simply just transactional. You give me what I want, and then, you know, I'll do the bare minimum or whatever. There needs to be full devotion. Absolutely. Anything else? All right. Well, question 6 then. We get into chapter 12. We've talked about the theme of rebellion as being one that crops up again and again in Numbers. Who in this text acts in rebellion, and then what is the punishment? So, first of all, let's label who it is that does rebel. Who is that? Aaron and Miriam, and what is their complaint? What's that? Yes, that's where it starts, and then where does that eventually lead to?
Seem to think that they on the same level as Moses.
Yeah. Has the Lord only spoken to you, Moses? Has he not spoken to us also? So yeah, it's almost as if they kind of use this, and this is, as far as I could tell, the only time in the narrative that we get mention of this Cushite woman. I think the Waldron material kind of talks about it. I don't think that would be Zipporah, because she was not a Cushite. She was of a different land, so this was maybe something recent. Regardless, they use that as kind of a jumping off point to then get to their main complaint, which is, we want to be on the same level as Moses. And as you're reading the story, maybe for the first time, one might read this account after having just come off of chapter 11 with the 70 elders, and what Aaron and Miriam say here is, maybe this is a reasonable statement from them. After all, Moses had essentially said that he wished all of Israel had this role of eldership, as it were. I'm kind of playing devil's advocate a little bit. I hope you realize that. Someone could get that idea. One author put it this way: does this mean that Moses' leadership was no better in God's eyes than that of other prophets like Miriam? You remember Exodus 15 in verse 20 in the Song of Moses. She's called a prophetess there. So there's that additional thing to take into account. Was Moses' role as leader not superior to that of the high priest Aaron? The purpose of this chapter then is to vindicate Moses' divinely given leadership and to brush aside any further suggestion that because of the establishment of other forms of authority, the type of leadership epitomized in Moses was no longer valid. So it's essentially saying Moses has his special role, Aaron has his special role. Moses can't move into that role. You don't see Moses complaining about him not being able to take on the role of high priest. That was a high honor. Miriam, in her own way, did certain things that Moses and Aaron could not do. So it's really, not to beat an old dead horse, but it's pride, isn't it? That's the root of the problem, is that they have been embittered and full of pride to get to this point. And so,
Good thing we don't have that problem.
yeah, right. And that's why I think all these things are recorded. Again, not only for that second generation, but also for us to see that, just because it happens once, that doesn't mean you get the lesson the first time. Over and over again, even to high levels of leadership. So after this is done, after the complaint is made, the Lord, as he has many times already in the story, comes down in his glory in the pillar of cloud, and he says in verse 6, "Hear now my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, make myself known to him in a vision. I speak to him in a dream. Not so with my servant Moses." Notice what he says next. "He is faithful in all my house. I speak with him face to face, even plainly and not in dark sayings, and he sees the form of the Lord. Why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?" There are so many bone-chilling statements like that from the Lord. This is one of them. You hear that, first of all, the pillar of cloud comes down to you directly. Yikes. And then those words come out. Not good. One of the things we've talked about already is when the glory of the Lord appears, so often it's meant to be a blessing. As the pillar of cloud is moving with the people, it's guidance, it's protection. But in these instances, it often brings death and plague, disease, and that's exactly what happens with Miriam. I'll go ahead and answer the second part of the question. She's struck with leprosy. And so, in many ways, this is to vindicate, to justify Moses as the rightful leader in this position of the people. One connection we might make with this, going back to Exodus chapter 4, and in verse 6, one of the first signs given to vindicate Moses as leader before Pharaoh, as he was going to lead the people out of Egypt, it was the sign of leprosy. It's white as snow, where he put it in the fold of his garment and brought it back out, and it was healed again. So there's maybe a slight connection there. But this time it's on Miriam. And so what does Miriam have to do? She is shut outside the camp for 7 days according to the law. And if you kind of read past it, you might not notice this. The people did not travel until Miriam was healed. When were the people to take up camp? Just generally? Do you remember? We've talked about this already. When the cloud... So the Lord does not move until Miriam is healed. So there's also some mercy there, I think. It could have been, Miriam, you're shut outside the camp. Rest of us, move on. Leave her. No, learn the lesson. There is punishment, and it's a heavy punishment. But nonetheless, that happens. Did I see a hand? Yes, sir.
When the Lord says, why did you not feel afraid to speak against Moses? That reminds me of when Saul was first king, and Saul and Jonathan were killed, and the guy runs to David and says, "Hey, I just killed Saul," which he lied. And David said, "You were not afraid to put your hand against the Lord's anointed," which Saul had tried to kill David 100 times, and David never ever did anything to him. Actually, just cut his garment one time, and he repented of that. That's what that reminds me of.
Yeah, there is there's a recognition there by David of, again, that gets to leadership, doesn't it? He is the Lord's anointed, even though he's acting rebelliously. But here, he is faithful, or the Lord calls Moses faithful. So even more so, why were you not afraid? Yeah, that's a great point. Anything else? All right, well, let's move into the next lesson here, lesson number 12. So God has stressed throughout the Pentateuch, the books of the law of Moses at this point, that he is a faithful God. He keeps his promises. That goes all the way back to Genesis 3, where we have the promised seed that would come through Eve, that would crush the seed or the head of Satan's seed. In Genesis 12, he promises Abraham a great nation, and the sons thereafter promises that great seed again, and he promises a land. And so Israel, at this point in their history, they are on the cusp of fulfilling, in a physical sense, that second promise, the great land promise. They're already a great nation, but they are on the cusp of this, so it would seem. But we'll see what happens as we go through the text. So the first question, not really a question, and I realize that. This is more of just take note of what's happening here. I included a map in this particular lesson that shows Kadesh Barnea in the wilderness of Paran, along with Hebron. And I just wanted you to note, maybe you drew some circles around these places or drew some lines. That there's even some things to indicate that on that particular map of just how close the people were to Canaan. And I included this quote from the Waldron material as well. At this point, God was ready to fulfill his promise to Abraham, Genesis 12:7, and to allow the people to move forward and take the land before them. If you look on, you've got kind of the key there that gives you, if you take your fingers, you can kind of see the mileage of how far they were from certain places. They're roughly 50 to 60 miles south of Hebron as the crow flies. Now that probably wouldn't be how they would have actually traveled, because you've got all sorts of terrain. You've got bodies of water and mountains and so forth. So it would have taken a bit longer than 50 to 60 miles, but about a week's journey on foot, maybe a little bit quicker, because of the ones that are going to be traveling. It's not going to be the whole nation that's going to travel at this time, just a few. And also, I know I'm getting ahead a little bit, but later on in Joshua, when the people have entered the land and they've begun to conquer, Caleb goes to Joshua and he asks that Hebron, which is one of the places on the map here that the 12 spies went into, that be given to him as inheritance, which was the hill country of Judah. And so they go that far in, the spies do. And we'll again see what happens from there. So question number 2, just moving straight in, and here's, I meant to throw that up there. This is another map, which is very simplistic, so you can kind of just see the places we're talking about: Kadesh Barnea, Hebron up there, and then Jerusalem a little further north. So before the people went in, question number 2, Moses, with God's approval, sent the 12 spies into the land. And I thought we might spend just a moment talking about that. In Numbers 13 and verse 1, it says, "The Lord spoke to Moses, saying," and if we go over to Deuteronomy chapter 1, we see a little bit more detail. Deuteronomy 1 and verse 22, "And every one of you came near," this is Moses speaking, "every one of you came near to me and said, let us send men before us, and let them search out the land for us, and bring back word to us of the way by which we should go up, and of the cities into which we shall come." Verse 23, "The plan pleased me well, so I took 12 of your men, one man from each tribe." And then they departed. So when we put all of that together, the people, it seems, are the ones that first devised this plan to go in, to spy out the land. And it's essentially, their request seems to be, we want to see which way is best to enter, which cities to go through, which fortified cities and so forth. Moses is pleased with this. And then it seems he takes that to God, or God is just there also, and he approves of this plan. And so we come back to Numbers 13, and it is the Lord who is speaking to Moses and saying, okay, you go forward with this plan and you do this thing. So then we get to the actual question. Each tribe was to send one man, a chief among his own tribe. What information does Moses tell them to report back after they return? What do you have for that?
The land is like, if the people are strong or weak, The land is good, whether the cities are like camps or strongholds. The land is rich or poor.
Yeah.
There are forests.
Yeah, so there's these either ors kind of going back and forth. See if it's basically good or bad is the sense of it. We'll come back to that here in just a minute. I wanted to also mention, of course, we get the list of the names of the men, and two of the ones, of course, that we remember, already mentioned them a couple of times. From the tribe of Judah, we have Caleb, the son of Jephunneh. From the tribe of Ephraim, Hoshea. You may have a note in your Bible that name means salvation. Hoshea, the son of Nun. And then at the end of those names, it tells us that Moses gave him a new name, which was Joshua, which that name means salvation is a part of it, but it's the Lord is salvation. That's kind of some foreshadowing, I think. Not only as Joshua would become the leader going into the promised land, but Joshua also as being a type, a shadow of Jesus. I think there's so many clear images of that in the text. Verse 17 of 13, Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan and said to them, "Go up this way into the south and go up to the mountains." If you go back to Exodus 13, 17 through 18, and you don't have to turn over there. Or you can turn over there. I'm not going to read it. But it tells us there that God did not lead them at that time by the way of the land of the Philistines, lest the people become fearful, lest they change their minds, lest they flee, because if they saw war, they might turn and run. he was preparing his people before that time. So now it seems, okay, we've reached that point. They are ready. They should be ready to enter the land. And as Ryan pointed out, all these things, this is what they are to look for, whether it's this or that, whether it's luscious or barren in terms of the vegetation. And he also tells them, in terms of the if the land is good or bad, fat or lean, forest or barren, bring back fruit from the land. The Waldron material notes that this was, I think, around July or August, as they had left Sinai in May. And so those are some of the things that they are to do. I want us to go straight into the next question, because both of these really go together. And I think you'll see that as we get into this one. But what had God already told Israel about the promised land? And I've given you a couple of references. You could have gone to several others as well. I'll bring up some of those. But what had the Lord, and we'll start with the land specifically, what had he promised? The land is flowing with milk and honey. It's good and spacious. Go back to Exodus 3 and verse 8. We see that. What else? It's large, enough to have all of these people who dwell there. There are all of these nations that all inhabit this good land. And the Lord says that they would inherit the land. This will happen. It will. Now, tied to that throughout is faithfulness, obedience, trust, all of those things. What does he promise about, we're talking about the ones that do dwell in the land, what does he promise about those people specifically as it relates to the Israelites? Yeah. And do you remember how, this is Exodus 23 and verse 30, was this kind of an immediate process? Just one day, they wouldn't be there anymore. Little by little, gradually, this would take place. And he would cause that confusion, where one would chase 100, 100 would chase 1,000, I think is the language. So I think this is an important point. In our modern day, in terms of wars and armies that move, spies are sent into a land for strategic position because they don't know the lay of the land. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what their enemies look like. They don't know, how many people are there, so on and so forth. The Lord had already given them ample information on what the land was to be, what it was, who dwelt there. He didn't give them specific battle plans. He just said, you go in and you'll take it. Now that will come eventually, but the spies they're not sent into the land because they didn't know if they had enough military power or not. They didn't go into the land because they wanted to see what terrain was the most advantageous on a certain battlefield. It was spied out in order to confirm what the Lord had already promised. This was meant to strengthen their faith. Say, look, everything the Lord said, it's true. Even the strength of the foreigners that live there. But guess what? That doesn't matter because the Lord has promised it. It is spacious. There's plenty of room. It's flowing with milk and honey. And as the text says in Leviticus, they're going to be vomited out of the land for being rebellious, for being sinful people. You just go in and take it. Anything else there on either of those questions, just within this full context?
I think it's interesting to note, I'm not sure the next question may be, so I hope I'm not getting ahead of you, but in the commands that Moses gave these spies, they do all but one.
Yeah.
They did not, like you said, they didn't see anything there that they did not expect, yet they saw these strong countries and they lost their courage.
Yeah, they certainly did. And I think we would say the majority did. Because there is that minority that's still in the background, which is also a theme we see just throughout the Bible. There's a remnant, small remnant, that is still faithful. Yes, sir.
We've been through this, trying to keep in mind that where they actually came from. Came from Goshen,
Mm-hmm.
and what they went through, the miracles that they witnessed,
Yeah.
the power of God that they witnessed, and to cross over a dry land and then watch God drown the Egyptian soldiers behind them, and carry on to miraculously provide food, miraculously provide water.
Mm-hmm.
To get to this, to getting to this point, and have witnessed that, just physically have seen this happen,
Yeah.
and then to go in and say, where's the courage?
Yeah.
What happened?
Should have been no doubt in their minds. And again, they weren't entirely sure how the Lord was going to do it, but they should have trusted, we've seen everything else that's happened. He's going to find a way. Yeah.
Again, it seems like it's so easy to look at this and point at this and say, what were they thinking?
Yeah.
And kind of look at ourselves and say, what
That's
were we
right.
thinking?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Certain situations.
Yeah. We notice the failure, but we be careful that it not be us as well, and we don't experience that same failure. Did I see another hand? All right. Well, let's move into question 4 then. Got about 10 minutes left. After 40 days in Canaan, the spies returned with their report. We've already talked about this a little bit, alluding to it, but what do they report back? Let's start with the good. What do they report back in terms of a positive note? Maybe if we can put that spin on it. What do they say? The land is good. And they do bring back fruit of the land. You remember that, I always loved that image as a kid, the grapes on the rod, them carrying it in. I'm like, man, that sounds delicious. I love that. And was it, figs and pomegranates, was it? Verse 23. So here's evidence. What the Lord said is true. Here it is. What did they also confirm? It's flowing with milk and honey. Yes, that's true. And they report back, and maybe this is not again, trying to put a spin on positivity, but what do they say about the people of the land in a quote-unquote positive way? They're big, they're strong, yeah. It's what the Lord said. And yet what? What do they end with? We are like, we can't do it. They're too strong for us to take the land. And this again was 10 of the spies. It was alluded to just a moment ago. They did not take courage. Verse 28 gives us some of that as well. Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of the Anak there. You go back to Exodus 15 and verse 15. And this will be something we come back to, especially as we get into just the little bit of Joshua that we have to cover in this quarter. It says there, now are the chiefs of Edom dismayed. This is the song of Moses after the Red Sea. Trembling seizes the leaders of Moab. All the inhabitants of Canaan have melted away. They forgot the song of Moses in this instance. How they read it, how they would have sung this song at this moment would have been, now are the chiefs of Israel dismayed. Trembling seizes the leaders of Israel. All the inhabitants of Israel have melted away. We can't do it. Because they forgot God's deliverance, they forgot his promises, they forgot his faithfulness, they forgot his power. And so this leads to rebellion. Verse 32, these are just a couple of textual notes. Verse 32, it says that they gave the children of Israel a bad report. Does anyone have a different translation of that particular phrase, bad report?
Evil report, the old translation.
Evil report. You may remember this phrase comes up a few times in the Old Testament. One of the places we've already seen it in the Pentateuch is back in Genesis, when Joseph brought back a bad or an evil report about his brothers. And I think that we can take it in that context to mean Joseph's brothers were doing bad, evil, wicked things in some capacity. And Joseph was simply giving the facts of the matter. Here, I think it's clear the idea is that they say the truth about the land. It is good. It's flowing with milk and honey. All that the Lord has promised, it's true about the land. But they never, this is a theme again, they never mention God in their report. They don't say, but the Lord has promised. There are two, and we'll notice this as we move forward in the text. Joshua and Caleb are going to be faithful in their report in chapter 14. Even here in 13, Caleb quiets the people or attempts to quiet the people and say, no, we can take the land. We can do it, but to no avail at this point. All right, anything there or anything else there on question 4?
I like what Caleb said, let's go take the land at once.
Yeah, like, be quiet. Let's just, come on. It's almost as if he's like, he's listened to all this grumbling and say, no, not again. Let's just, we know what's right. Let's do it. But yeah, one voice among many others that are contrary. Anything else? All right, let's see what we can do with question 4 as we move forward here. So, and we'll just start this out. We may come back to this on Wednesday. But I've asked you here to contrast the response of the congregation as you move into chapter 14, 1 through 4, with the response of Joshua and Caleb. So, how might we contrast both of their responses?
Congregation had their mind on Egypt again.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we wish that we had died in Egypt or in the wilderness, even now. Just kill us now. And we might contrast that with what Joshua and Caleb say about the land, and they reiterate the land is good, just as God has promised. So again, this contrast with the land. Do you even remember what else do they say about the land of Egypt? The congregation. They start hatching a plan to go back and to do what, or how would they accomplish that? Let's pick a new leader. We're tired of you, Moses. It's not going to be the last time that happens. What are they effectively saying when they say, we want a new leader?
Trust God.
We don't trust. 1 Samuel 8 comes to mind. They have not rejected you, Samuel, but they've rejected me. That seems to ring true here. And let's return to the land of bondage instead of going into the land of promise. Isn't that interesting? But again, Joshua and Caleb, they say, no, the Lord will give us this land if he delights in us. What you're doing right now, Israel, is not pleasing to the Lord. Yes, sir.
Reminds me of just people who obey the gospel, commit their lives to God's will, and then for whatever reason, got shifted back to say, no, I like this back here, this life back here that I have before is better. I'm going to reject Christ at this point.
Yeah.
I am done with this.
Mhm.
This is where I prefer to be.
Yeah.
This is too difficult. I'm going here.
Everyone's heard the phrase, familiarity breeds contempt. that seems to have been true with the Israelites at this time in the wilderness. They were tired of the wilderness, and that they were now up against Canaan. I think it can also, another phrase we might attribute to Israel, going along with Brother Mike's comment, distance makes the heart grow fonder. They were looking at Egypt with rose-tinted glasses, weren't they? They longed to go back. Talk about rewriting history, man. They were doing a horrible injustice to what they had come out of, making it out to be sort of this, Shangri-La, sort of paradise on earth, where they never had to do any work. They were slaves. They were in bondage. And they view, and it's a total swap of what it should be. They view now their time in the wilderness as being in bondage, or worse than bondage, because they would rather die at this point. Just some other things, just quickly here. We've got a couple of minutes. You notice the first response of the people is that they weep and they cry out in fear when hearing the spies' report. Joshua and Caleb, when hearing the response of the people, they also weep in a more drastic way, ripping their clothes in grief over their response. They grumble against Moses and Aaron, the people do, but Joshua and Caleb speak boldly the Lord's promises. They viewed themselves as, maybe we can make this last comment and then we'll close. They viewed themselves as helpless and doomed. Whereas Joshua and Caleb say that the Canaanites, they will be, quote, our prey. There in the text, the congregation says, our children, our wives, they're going to become prey in the wilderness. Keep that phrase in mind, because the Lord is not going to forget that as he moves forward in their punishment. But Joshua and Caleb, it's important to note, say, no, they will be protected because the Lord has protected us and will continue to if we are faithful. The people of the land, they will be our prey because their protection has left them. The Lord goes before us. There's nothing their fortified cities can do, their armies, their iron chariots, none of that will save them. And ultimately, I think we could say they forgot the Lord's presence. The Lord's presence is about to manifest itself again in a very visible way with the cloud of presence, but we'll get to that on Wednesday. Any final comments before we close this morning? All right, thank you everyone. There are new lessons in the back, just so you can look ahead and prepare accordingly, but we'll continue in this lesson on Wednesday. Thank you.